Meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. 4:29 by my computer. Dr. Littrell will be remotely communicating with us to the board. Tracy, could I get you to do the invocation and the pledge, please?
Sure can. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for our opportunity to be here today and conduct business. I pray that you'll lay onto our hearts and minds that we'll do the best job we can do for the citizens that we represent in Carroll County, Lord. Thank you for blessing us, watch over us, give us health and strength, and be with the people in the community that are affected by COVID, Lord. Thank you for allowing us to have a few more people with us tonight, and continue to bless us, watch over us, and thank you for sending your Son to die on the cross that might have everlasting life. In Jesus' name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first, next thing on the agenda is the financial forecast.
We have Mr. Corbin Stone with Robinson Farm and Cox here.
Hopefully everybody has a copy of this forecast. I don't know if I've got an extra one. This gentleman. First off, thanks for having me. The forecast went pretty well. We started, back in January. Pretty well had a forecast put together, and then COVID happened, and we scrapped that and started again with the 21 budget as a base for the forecast. And I think I told Solel at one point, trying to forecast in a pandemic is kind of like trying to put up a tent in a hurricane. You're going to get wet. You just don't know if you're going to get blown away or not. But at any rate, we put it together with some pretty significant assumptions on where revenues were going and where expenditures were going to try to give you the best picture we can at this point. And I will tell you, I think it would make sense to revisit it next year, just at least to see where you are in reference to the projections. And then we can make some changes for you, no charge, because COVID is just such a large unknown. If you go to page 9, I'll kind of walk you through the basic parts of the forecast. Tell you some things that kind of jumped out at me as I was putting it together. And then as best we can tell you kind of where you're going based on everything we know today. As you look at table 4 on page 9, you can see that beginning balance is $12.5 million. In other words, that's where we think you're going to start. Basically, July 1, just a few days ago, that's where you're going to start the 2021 fiscal year. I'll point out two things about that number. It includes $2.5 million worth of COVID money, and it also includes $3.2 million in first half tax collections. Of course, that was delayed. The due date is now in July, but $3.2 million came in. So if we back those off, you'd be backing off about $5.7 million in that beginning base year budget amount. As you go down to the second line, you see property taxes for 21 or $27 million. That's because you've got about $4.3 million in that first half collections that are going to come in July, or we hope they come in July. And then you've got your collections in December, and then you'll get collections again next June. So you've essentially got 1.25 years worth of collections here in 2021. Other local taxes, and there's detail behind all of this further back in the report, but I'll kind of walk you through it. Other local taxes, one adjustment we made, or really you made in your budget, was you reduced sales tax by about $200,000. We don't show that in the forecast coming back quickly. In other words, we don't think there's going to be a V-shaped recovery. We think it's going to take a while to get back to where you were. So we show that drop in $200,000, and then we show it increasing at the historical rate at which sales tax have increased for the county. In recovered cost, we have a contingency for about $340,000 for the current fiscal year, the 2021 fiscal year. It's essentially, we're showing it as a negative revenue. If you look at the detail, you'll probably see it. It'll jump out at you. We do anticipate in the forecast your current tax rate 73 cents, personal property rate of 230. For state shared costs, those are the costs, sheriff, Commonwealth's attorney, treasurer. We don't anticipate any increases over the forecast period. We know the state's going to have to start balancing their budget, so we just left those revenues flat. We don't know what other revenues are going to be impacted as they try to shore themselves up from COVID. As you go down to expenditures, in general administration, you can see it's about $2.5 million higher in '21 than it is in '22, and that's because you're going to spend $2.5 million in COVID money. So your general administration is $2.4 million, then it drops down to $2.2 million in 2022. We've estimated that salaries are going to increase over the forecast period at 3% a year. We've estimated that fringe benefits are going to increase at 5% a year because of health insurance and retirement. Your VRS, number one, the stock market hasn't done that well lately, aside from the surge we've had recently, but you're still trying to fund a deficit in your retirement, your state retirement money that's held by VRS. The next thing that's a key note is under debt service. You can see it goes from $4.7 million to $2.5 million. And I'll tell you, this first year includes some capital items. So I take that back. The general administration was not the COVID money. The COVID money shows up in other expenses, but we've got some capital outlays and capital expenses in that first column. So that first column, you start the year $12.5 million. We anticipate $49 million in revenue, $46 million in expense. So a growth in fund balance of about $2.5 million to end the year at just under $15 million. And again, the $12.5 million at the top includes $2.5 million in COVID money. You get a bump because you have over a year's worth of collections in the current year for taxes, and then you do have expenditures of $2.5 million in COVID money down below. And we go to the next page, and the one thing I'll point out about Table 4, we haven't included any capital items in that. So as you look at that fund balance, you would say, hey, we're going to grow from $12.5 million in 2020 to $26 million in 2026. There's no capital items in there other than that first year. So any major repairs on buildings, any major outlays for equipment, anything like that has not been included on Table 4. On Table 5, we take your forecasted net cash flow, which is the second line down from Table 4, and then we kind of work our way down the page and say, all right, we got capital expenditures is about the fifth line down. We show how much they're going to be. We go about 8 lines down. You see your forecasted cash balances at the beginning of the years, adjusted for debt service or capital projects. Adding to that your surplus for each year, then subtracting off your capital projects. Then we come back to the net change in fund balance that we anticipate. And you can see in that first year, $2.5 million, that's the current budget year. 2022, $511,000. 2023, $535,000. 2024, $1,077,000. 2025, we see an increase of $668,000. In 2026, $828,000 increases in fund balance. I'll point out that that's really driven by two things, and neither one of them explains all of it. Are the things you've done, the changes you've made in tax increases, and then the reduction in debt service are what's driving the increase. But it doesn't add up to those two items, in other words. So, you look out in the year 2023 and fund balance grows by $500,000. Well, you certainly raise taxes by a whole lot more than that. And your debt service is dropping off from about $4.7 million to $2.5 million over the forecast period. So there are a couple things at play that are driving these increases in fund balance. The other thing I want to point out is that your capital projects at $8.3 million in this forecast period, that's not a lot of money on capital. So if the school board has to make a major renovation at one of the schools or something of that nature, it's not in here. if something like that comes up, we need to put it in here. Most of these capital items are very small. They add up to $8.3 million, but each individual project or outlay is relatively small. So right now, best we can tell, at the bottom of page 10, you can see that fourth line up from the bottom, you can see that your forecasted cash balance for next year is going to be about $15 million, and out in 2026, it's about $18.7 million, with all those things I just mentioned being cooked into this forecast. And I'll stop there for just a second and see if you have any questions about Exhibit 4 or Exhibit 5.
So essentially, that forecasted cash balance doesn't include any school construction or any major items, so like a
Exactly.
roof
Exactly.
or a boiler, or any of those items.
Yeah, I don't think we had any boilers in the CIP, from what I recall. So yeah, if you've got any sort of major outlay coming, it's going to tap into that growth in fund balance that we anticipate. The things that kind of jumped out at me, twice-year collections really shored up your cash balances. And the timing was pretty good on that. Because we just don't know what when you're going to need that, how much you're going to need with COVID. If we go into another shutdown, how that's going to impact you. The other key drivers of the forecast were the tax increases that you enacted, and you're getting a tailwind from reduced debt service because it's dropping from $4.7 million a year to $2.5. So you're getting a pretty nice tailwind there, which is helping you out. Without all those things, that growth in fund balance wouldn't exist in this forecast. Kind of overarching, I wrote in my notes, long-term trends that we're seeing. Your expenditures are expected to grow faster than your revenues. So what we've done is your revenues were kind of growing like this, your expenditures were growing a little bit faster. And what you've done, you've popped those revenues up. But these things are still going to grow, percentage-wise, they're going to grow a little bit slower than your expenditures are going to grow. State and federal funding, if you look back, particularly at school funding, after 2008, 2009, you saw state funding for the schools just fall into a hole. It really dropped off after the Great Recession. After COVID, I would anticipate something similar. I don't see how the state and the federal government are going to be able to get their budgets in order without pushing some of that down to the local level. So like I said, on your shared costs, we've said that's going to be flat during the forecast period. But it could even be a cut. And we just don't know how the school board is going to be impacted. We probably won't know that until the winter sometime. The other thing that we think is probably already starting to occur as baby boomers start to retire and there's just less folks in the workforce as we come out of this and unemployment starts going back down again. We do think there's going to be a drive up in wages, just trying to find people to work. So I think you're going to face that, particularly in your more technical areas. Call it the STEM area, but accounting, finance, engineering, those sorts of areas, I think you're going to have a harder time finding folks. But overall, I'm pleased with how the forecast looks. It's pretty conservative in the forecast, but at the same time, there's still a lot of unknowns out there that until we know them, we don't know how to put them in the forecast. So we do the best we can. But overall, I'm pleased to see that right now, at least, it looks like fund balance is going to be increasing over this 5-year period. And I'll also tell you in the back of the report, you can see more of the detailed projections. And one thing when I was reviewing this, after I'd already printed all these copies, I realized I have a sheet that says if I use a factor to forecast something. So factor 1 might be the consumer price index, the projected trend of the consumer price index. And I realized I didn't put the factor numbers. I think it's on table 1 in this report. So I'm going to send out a new table that shows you the factor numbers. So if you go over to, say, page 26, for example, and you see personnel salaries under electoral board, we have a 24 out there. That's how that's being projected forward. So you'll know that a 24 means that it's being increased at 3% a year. And my factor table that's in the report itself, it tells you that there's a projection there at 3% a year, but it doesn't reference the factor number. So I'm going to send you a new table. I'll email it to Salel so that he can provide it to all you guys electronically. And it's kind of good to have that in a separate sheet anyway as you're reviewing this, so then you know how these things put together. But I'll stop there and try to answer any questions as best I can.
For counties that have gone to the two payment years, what have you noticed on the back end? Like in October and November?
Well, yeah, your cash balances should be a little bit higher when you get into October. If you were just collecting once a year, your low point's probably going to be October in cash. Your cash balances are going to bottom out. And so what it does is this shores up your cash for that slower period of the year. So you shouldn't have any cash flow issues. It's going to drop from where it is between now and October, but it shouldn't drop down to $1 or $2 or $3 million. You should still have ample cash on hand.
Dr. Letro, are you hearing all this?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure you're hearing this. Anybody else have any questions?
And I told Salel just a minute ago, this does not include an adjustment for land use, so any changes in the land use.
One thing I think I heard a safeguard was that in August, when the governor and General Assembly has their special session and they adjust the state budget, do like they did in 208, 202, and previous years, go after the school board and constitutional officers. This doesn't project
No.
anything in the county picking up those costs.
No, the only thing at this point, we're just showing that shared costs are going to be flat for the projection period in terms of state aid. A lot of the state and federal aid is expenditure driven, so primarily social services budget, CSA. So, and it's linked. So if you spend $4 million, you get back $3.5 million, or whatever. So if we see cuts in social services and CSA, we would expect the county to cut the local share as well by the same proportion in this forecast, so that you're in the same boat, if you will. So if the state says they're going to cut social services by 10%, we would expect the county share of social services to also be cut by 10%. I know. That's why I said as things change and we get updates to the state budget, this is a working document. We'll make changes to it.
I do have one question, right here on the page 9 there, beginning balance.
Yes, sir.
Forward, I understand we're like at 12.5 million. I understand that the 3.2 is collected from this year's tax collections already in the COVID money. But where did that jump come from there to that's pretty much 2.4 million next year.
Yeah, the next year, you're going to jump up to about $15 million. You should. We should see you starting off next year with about $15 million on July 1st. We hope. And remember, Table 4 doesn't include any capital items past that budget year. So in year 1, 2022, when you see the increase down at the bottom, you see that $2.3 million increase. That's prior to any capital. We include capital on the next
Right.
page.
Seemed pretty drastic, pretty much 22, 23's pretty big jump too.
Yeah, well, remember the capital for 2022, you've got to look at the next page, yeah. So the actual jump from 22 to 23, well, if you look at the table 5 on page 10, if you get closer to the bottom, you'll see under the 2022 column, 14,987,000. Then you've got your operating increase of $2.3 million. Then you have capital projects of about $1.9 million. So your net increase is $511,000. And the reason it's done this way is so you can see down at the bottom, you see that 73 cents across the bottom. It's so we can tell you that if you were really tight, we would say, just to meet your capital needs for 2023, you've got to raise taxes 5 cents. To meet your operating needs, you've got to raise taxes 3 cents. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's why we've got this table set up like this.
Right.
You can see at the bottom, we've got your 73-cent tax rate through the entire forecast period.
And this forecast doesn't include any transfers to PSA or EDA.
Just whatever would have been budgeted for the current year, then that would have been projected out. And I can't remember what that was right off the top of my head.
And will this put us in alignment with our fund balance policy?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll have an adequate fund balance. The question always, if the school board walks down here tomorrow and says we're going to build a $30 million school, that's going to impact you. Yeah, I think this gives you an adequate fund balance at June 30th of next year. Probably a little on the light side this year, considering $2.5 million is COVID money. Yes, Lyle, I think if that was taken, if the PSA contributions were taken out of the,
Yeah, they're not in.
if they're not in the budget, then they haven't been projected out. So to the extent you've got contributions there, they're not. I'm sorry, I take that back. On page 36, we've got contributions to the PSA, $1 million, $1,020,000, which might have been related to debt service, if I recall. We don't show any increases in those contributions, show that they're flat for the forecast period. Yeah.
At $1 million.
Right at just over, just slightly over.
Page is that full?
36.
36.
Who like to synthesize?
Yeah, it's going to take you a while. That's it's 30, probably 45 pages, 41 pages here. So It's going to take you a while to kind of work your way through it. And, I mean, the reason we have preliminary draft on there is because it is a working document. So as the board members see something, you want to know the impact of changing that, reducing those contributions to PSA. We can reduce those down over the forecast period.
So we can do, that's what's good about this document, we can increase or show an increase in property rate, see what it would do.
Exactly.
The whole 9 yards just gives us a planning document.
Right. This is essentially like putting together a 5-year budget. And, you know, most of the time people just look at a 1-year budget, and then once that year's over, they start the next year. This is, you know, where are we going to be in 5 years as opposed to where we're going to be in 1 year, kind of setting the longer term trajectory for the county.
I guess part of one of the things that you and I discussed, at some point, the county needs to have somebody in-house that can do these financial forecasts.
Yeah. I think that does need to happen. Believe me, I like doing them. I enjoy putting these together and helping communities. But at the end of the day, I think if you've got somebody in-house, a finance person that can put this together and update it every year, then when you're going through the annual budget process, and you guys say, what's a 72-cent tax rate do? Not only this year, but how does that impact us in 5 years? And you can kind of see the compounding effect of some of these decisions that you're making. You don't just see it in 1 year's budget. But I think that is key for most localities these days, particularly when you get to a certain size, to have someone put together a 5-year plan that they're updating almost, you know, every quarter for the board to see how your decisions impact longer term the county. Thanks for reminding me that, Slow. And we did that. We did one of these years ago in Botetourt County, and that's what they've done since. They in-house have a long-term projection they update annually as part of the budget, and I think it's worked out very well for them. So you can really see long-term how things impact you financially. It's almost like retirement planning in a way, except the county's not going to retire, but it's almost like planning for the future, and little adjustments here or there sometimes can make a big difference in the long run.
If you could just get us accurate in the CSA and jail budget, we would. Those about seem to be the toughest to
Sure.
see, anyway. Any other questions?
I think, Corbin, with this, there's really no allocation of funding for incentives for industrial prospects or rent. There's other kinds of things that boards sometimes take on.
Yeah, depending on how much. I think we have some economic development. There's some budgeted economic development expense in here, but you know, if you've got a $2 million incentive, no, that's not in here. No, I mean that's you know, and along those lines, if an industry shows up and we need this and that, and pretty soon you're up to a couple $1 million, I think you have to look at what's the return on that investment. How quickly do you get your money back in terms of tax revenue? To see how it impacts the longer term forecast. You know, if you don't get it back in 20 years, then you got to question whether it's a good project or not.
And the last issue, I think, for Corbin sits down, there's a little agreement, a documentation of understanding between the county and Robinson Farmer Cox that needs to be adopted that deals with non-audit services they perform. It's in the board package. Somebody can need a motion to somebody to sign that to understand.
Yeah, anytime I don't work on your audit, but our office does. So anytime your auditors do something for you similar to this, we have to sign a document, and you guys saying that you essentially understand the forecast, and it essentially becomes your work product at the end of the day. We're not, and of course, any changes you want to make to it, we're happy to do that.
Everybody see that? You gotta have that. I guess I can read it here. It says documentation of understanding with client involving independence with respect to non-audit services performed. That's
Yes, sir.
It has been determined that Robinson Farmer Cox Associates is performing a non-audit service to the county of Carroll, Virginia for its engagement to prepare a financial forecast. The service is not a financial audit and attestation engagement, nor a performance audit. We contend that Robinson Farmer Cox Associates maintain its independence with respect to the county of Carroll, Virginia, in the performance of its non-audit service because Robinson Farmer Cox Associates will not perform any management functions or make management decisions. Because of the nature of the non-audit service, Robinson Farmer Cox Associates will not be auditing its own work. Services provided as part of this engagement require neither audit nor attestation functions. Typically, these services involve calculation of future financial performance and preparation of alternative scenarios with the scope of management, defined parameters, which management can then analyze and use as a basis for making informed decisions. The objectives, scope of work, and deliverables for the non-audit service are to conduct a financial forecast. Management understands that management is responsible for the substantive outcome of the work and therefore has a responsibility to be in a position in fact and appearance to make an informed judgment on the results of the non-audit service. Management has designed Robert Slell Dalton, County Administrator, to be responsible and accountable for overseeing the non-audit service. This individual is qualified to conduct the required oversight because of his position, his knowledge, and understanding of the service performed. The County Administrator will monitor the performance of non-audit service to determine that the service meets the objectives of our approach. Management of the County of Carroll County will make all decisions involving management functions related to the non-audit service, accepts full responsibility for those decisions, and management has evaluated the adequacy of the service performed. This responsibility and agreement to the adequacy of the service are indicated by the signature of management on this document. I understand and agree with these statements contained in here. It needs a county administrator's signature, and we need to authorize the county administrator to sign that.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we authorize our county administrator to sign the document.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Motion on a second. And a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Tracy.
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Philip? Yes. I say yes. Now, next, is the school going to do thing at this point?
Now, one last thing, if I may ask, for every year our audit, the last few years, had this comment about fund balance. In your opinion, after looking at all this, are we headed in the correct?
Yeah, I mean,
path?
your fund balance, cross our fingers, if everything in the forecast is close, yeah, your fund balance at the end of next year should be adequate. Should be over what the minimum we would like to see. Again, if somebody comes up with a big project, we got to reevaluate it.
I see some places, ours is 12%, and I see some places that are 15%, and is somewhere in between those two numbers is.
Yeah, it's adequate. You know, we always say the minimum is 10%, that once you drop below 10%, and that includes county, school board added together, subtracting the transfer between. So once you drop below 10%, you're getting into dangerous territory. If you drop below 5%, there's a good chance you'll be taking out a tax anticipation note sometime in the fall. So it's a little different now that you've gone to twice your tax collections, because we actually wanted a little bit higher than that 10% in June. So yeah, 15% wouldn't be out of the realm of where we'd like to see it, because you're taking that money you used to collect in December, you just moved it. It's still the same money, you've just moved it. So that means fund balance should be really $6-7 million higher in June now than it has been historically. So, unless the collection date gets moved again, the due date gets moved again, but hopefully that won't happen next year.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks for having me. My down on the bottom of that cover page, you've got my phone number. I was driving here from somewhere else. I don't have any business cards with me, but if you call, my name's Corbin. They know who I am when you call. So if you call that number, you have questions about the forecast, we'll make the adjustments for you, and I'll get your email address and get it right back out to you so you can see any changes.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Most of the school system wasn't listed on here, but I think we had a discussion about.
I invited school board.
Coming back at 6.
It's coming back at 6.
We're coming
Okay.
back at 6. For our invitation.
And we really do appreciate the constitutional officers and everybody coming to listen. So I understand where financial forecast is taking us, to know where we're at financially now and in the future. I think it's important for all of us to be on the same page.
Yeah, I recognize we have people here from Hillsville. Of course, we got a closed session coming up. Appreciate you folks. We'll be talking with you after the closed session, involved with the school board and the other folks here. All right. Do I have a motion to go into closed session, reference to A5, prospective business?
Make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Phil. Joe?
Yes.
Tracy? Dr. Littrell?
Dr. Littrell, do you vote to go into closed session?
Robbie?
Yes.
Yes.
I say yes.
I'll hang up on you and call you back in a minute.
Okay.
document.
Okay. Is anyone there from B&H?
I'm gonna bring them up here.
Okay.
They don't want to come up here.
Is anyone there from B&H?
Yes.
Bring them up here.
I know Dr. Little wanted to do this.
Your call has been forwarded to an
Technology is great.
Hello, did I lose you?
We're getting feedback. I think we fixed it now.
Okay, what are we doing? I'm sort of lost here.
I think, didn't you say you wanted to read the appreciation?
I did. You said that there's nobody there.
Yes, they're here.
If maybe they could come up to the podium.
Rick said go ahead and read it.
Okay, well, we did this some years ago, but we used to highlight Carroll County businesses each month, and I wanted to start that again, and I'm going to start with the Pipers Gap District business, and I chose B&H Heating and Cooling. And they've been serving the Twin Counties for over 49 years, and they're located at 4971 Carrollton Pike in Woodlawn. It's currently owned and operated by Timmy Hill since 2013, and he has 23 years of experience at HVAC, servicing heat pumps, installing heat pump systems, along with servicing oil and gas furnaces. He says he's honored to serve his community and blessed with an amazing work team. B&H and Cooling look forward to serving Carroll County for the many years to come. And I don't know, but every time I drive by their business there on 58, I see more and more service trucks in the parking lot, so they must be doing an extraordinary business. And I just want to congratulate Timmy and Crystal for being recognized this month for Business of the Month in Carroll County.
Thank you. Thank you.
So if Rex, you could give her the certificate, that would be great.
Done took care of it.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Crystal, for being there.
Thank you.
I know that they do good business. They do my work in the house and in the previous business, installed my heat pump and everything. Still working great with the yearly maintenance. Come over and check it out. Appreciate what y'all do.
And I might ask another supervisor of your, if you want to volunteer to highlight a business from your district at next month's meeting. If not, we'll do the Army volunteering type.
Sound like a challenge to me.
I'll take that challenge, Dr. Littrell, for next month.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, Tammy, I guess you're up.
I think Dr. Burnett's up.
Dr. Burnett, he slipped in on me. Come on up. Tell us what you've got planned. I've been hearing a little bit, tidbit here and there, but
Sure. Mr. Dalton asked that we get us a list together of COVID-19 related expenses, and of course, a lot of it's a guessing game. A lot of it is just, try to pull this thing down, I'm sorry, I can't talk that over my face. But a lot of it is things that we know we're going to need. I mean, I talked to a vendor who provided me with a calculation tool that's helped as far as like cleaning supplies and all. And basically, for the school year, for just say hand sanitizer, for a kid that uses hand sanitizer twice a day, that's a gallon of hand sanitizer a year per kid. So you're looking at well over 3,500 gallons of hand sanitizer for kids. So some of the estimates you see you may think are outrageous, but it's and we don't know. We don't know if this thing's going to last till December or if it's all through next year. So a lot of ours are estimates. But we do know there are a lot of additional related expenses, and we picked up a lot of additional related expenses already. We were able to continue feeding kids and keeping our food service workers and transportation workers employed, and that was an additional expense. So, we got folks that are, well, you see there are 55 staff members that are over 65 years of age, and technically, if they choose not to come back, then we're responsible for putting substitutes in their positions. So there are a lot of different things that that are coming into play. There are things that we've already paid out, things that we've already used our COVID monies for. So there's just a lot of different unexpected, anticipated cost. And I know that list is a lot, and of course, we understand it's asking a lot, but that's about as good a set of numbers as we can get together right now, without knowing, particulars.
If I may, we asked the school board to develop a budget about 2 months earlier than normal, even before the COVID pandemic and school was let out, which they did. We were trying to push forward the budget. None of the items, when I realized the other day going through the details of their budget, that they had not included any items in how to sanitize a bus or the school or check the temperature of students, is coming through that was never included in our budget or never thought about being included in our budget. So I went up to ask for an appointment for Dr. Burnett and said, please tell us how you can reopen schools and what it takes under the COVID guidelines that have been developed and that submitted to the Department of Education, I assume, that we can make this happen. And that's how this cost estimate came about, because I have a real fear, based on the budget that we did and the earliness before COVID came about, that they were inadequately prepared to open school back up and safeguard the children. So I feel that
Just to give you a guideline, one of the recommendations, well, not rather, one of the requirements is to do health checks every day with students. And that requires taking every child's temperature as they walk through the door. And you can imagine at Carroll County High School with over 1,000 students there, if you were, like Michelle's having to do out here with us, if you did that with 1,000 students, you'd be 11 o'clock starting school. So we bought scanners. Well, we're not bought, we've ordered scanners. We got one in to where that they can walk through and it'll give you a digital readout of their temperature without having to manually do that. So, and there's expensive, those things are expensive. A lot of these items are expensive. Some of the cheaper things are these, the mask, but we want to provide every child with a mask, every teacher with a mask. So, but anything else?
Would you just kind of briefly give us an idea of what, I'm not sure everybody knows the requirements that you're going to have to go through. Just give us something brief, let's say
Sure.
from the school bus picking up a kid, getting him to the school,
Yep.
and then in the classroom setting.
Recommended social distance is 6 foot. They did go to the World Health Guidelines. It says 3, that you can do 3, but it's still recommended 6. If you talk about putting kids on a school bus, that's 1 kid per seat, alternating window seat and aisle seat. So that cuts our capacity of transporting kids at least in half, a lot more than half. Now, family members can sit together, but it still cuts our transportation in half. To maintain that same type of distancing in the classroom, you can't have a classroom of 30 kids. You're going to have to cut those down to about 15 kids. So what we've decided on doing right now, until the phase guidance changes, is that we will be doing a hybrid schedule. In other words, half the kids will come on Monday and Tuesday, and the other half will come on Thursday and Friday. And Wednesday would be a complete online learning day, so we can go back in and clean the classrooms from top to bottom midweek. That's one of the things that we've got facing us right now. And the transportation thing is a biggie. I mean, if you can't get them here, you can't teach them. We're also going to provide online learning. We got at the beginning of last week, we had 300 students signed up for a virtual program. That's increased to 400 by the first of this week. We're going to utilize some of our teachers to do online learning with the students. And that's going to depend a lot upon the age of the student. So we're trying to offer more than, because we do have a lot of people that are just still really scared about coming back. We have some employees that are scared about coming back to work, and a lot of them have valid medical conditions, that won't allow them that. So, bear with us. We've got a huge task coming upon us.
It'll probably evolve every day.
It changes every day. Actually, they sent us a 132-page document 2 weeks ago on the redesign guidance of recovery. Just got, right before I came down here, I opened up my email on this, and I got a new copy of that. So I got another 132 pages that are different than the original 132 pages. So with the new guidelines, so it changes every day.
Is your plan, everybody up to 3rd grade is required to come to school, correct? Did I get that correct? Or did I
No,
read
that was some
somewhere else?
earlier guidance that we used during summer school, that everybody up to 3rd grade was allowed the opportunity to have summer school, but that's changed now. It's K-12.
Okay.
Yeah, or actually pre-K-12. We're going to bring pre-K back too.
I thought I'd read that they was going to allow it to be a 3-foot distance instead of a 6-foot.
It is, yeah. That World Health Organization says 3 foot. Now, CDC and the state still recommend 6, but 3 is allowable. But that 3 feet still doesn't get you much on a school bus. It'll allow you to put more kids in a classroom, but not on a bus.
So how would you,
Check, it's a little late time to get them to school, ain't it? Looks like
Well,
they
we're
want to get on the bus, he's exposed,
Yeah.
that's slow down.
We're asking parents to do it at home, to do temperature screenings and health screens at home first, and then when we get back to school, we'll do them again. I hate to ask a bus driver to take kids' temperature every time they get on the bus.
It doesn't sense for us anyway,
Yeah.
at least you can quarantine the bus if something happens. I
Well,
guess that's the best way to deal with it.
That's another thing. If we have, according to guidelines right now, if we have a case in a classroom, we've got to quarantine that class. So that includes a teacher. If that kid rides a bus, that could include the bus. There's so many variables out there that can happen. And we may not have to quarantine the class. It just depends on the guidance from the Department of Health. They may find some extenuating circumstances that we don't have to quarantine the whole class. But, that's really not up for us to decide. Well, our decision would be to quarantine everybody. But any exceptions would have to be made by the Department of Health, Dr. Shelton.
So I guess that person's gonna be our guiding factor on just about anything we do and how we address the situation.
Bless her heart. You know, she's got the whole Mount Rogers Health District, and she's got a lot of more schools than just us to worry about, but she's been very helpful to us so far.
How did the latter part of the schools go when people were doing the online stuff? How did that turn out with the majority of the kids? That
It
worked out?
went, for the majority of kids, it went well. It's still not the same. You know, there's a lot of things that you just don't get online that you get in the classroom, like the extra help, and some of our bigger problems were connectivity issues. You know, broadband access and things of that nature. That's always going to be a problem for us, and I know that there's some talk at the state level about, you know, helping us out with that a little bit, but you know, that doesn't happen overnight. This broadband expansion doesn't, so there's a lot, you know, a lot to that. But you know, it did go well. It had its challenges, and we've addressed some of those challenges for when we come back with those families to help them out. But there's some, you know, folks they just don't have access. We can give them a Chromebook, and that's our plan, is to send every student home with a Chromebook. And, you know, on the days off, they have a USB drive that we can save work on, but still, it's a big issue. And there's going to be some disparity.
If you got diligent parents, they keep up. If they're not too diligent, they may not.
That's right. It's a lot of it's going to fall back, you know, with the parents as well.
I sympathize with you. It's not going to be easy. It's
Nah,
gonna be a learn-
it's a challenge, but we'll make it through it. We made it through the closing. We'll make it through the reopening, so.
Anybody have any questions?
Dr. Burnett, school's opening pretty soon in my mind.
Yeah, August 17th. We were originally scheduled to open on August 6th, so we moved it back 11 days, just to give us a little more time, and, you know, hopefully that we'll see a decrease in cases.
So if the board saw fit, based off what August, you've ordered a lot of these supplies, incurred a lot of expenses already.
We've ordered a lot of this already.
An estimate of what spent to date or allocated to date.
Ms. Questenberry,
Everything that we put on the spreadsheet, probably 75 to 80% of it are items that are already allocated or have been incurred. Because not only did we have to implement a lot of these last spring when this happened and incur those costs, and one of the largest things, like you said, was getting packets to the home, delivering those every week, along with the meals and the technology. Tremendous amount of costs were incurred at that point. Cleaning supplies right now, it's unbelievable the amount that we're having to order. PPE equipment, we have teachers that still have to change diapers in your special needs classrooms, you know, just getting them gowns and shields and gloves. And you'll see on there numerous entries for gloves. We're running into being limited the number that we can get from vendors. So we're having the various departments order them so that we can kind of bypass that limit. Because if I call to get 20 cases, they're telling me we even have 5. So, you know, we're having to spread that out so we can get the PPE in here.
there's a particular machine that we wanted to buy as far as for disinfecting that would actually kill the virus within 2 minutes. And you could do multiple classrooms at one time, and it's a 16-week wait period on it for it to even be built. So that knocked that out of the head, so we had to go with a different vendor. So,
How much communication have you had with the teachers out there? I mean, I'm sure you have, but, you know, I know you've got concerns with them. They have concerns.
we do. We've had teachers serve on committees and parents serve on the committees. We put 6 committees together when we decided, you know, how we were going to plan, how we're coming back. So we tried to gather input from just about every group that we could. We've had some conversations, well, our principals have conversations on a weekly basis at their faculty meetings. They're still having faculty meetings going on, or right now in the summer at a monthly basis. So, we're trying to keep everybody up to date. We've got to get our final plan in 3 weeks before school starts. So we're looking at making sure that it's submitted to the state within the next 2 weeks. And we're still, we've sent surveys out and trying to find out, who's going to take advantage of transportation online, so online learning. So we've had a lot of communication, trying to do a press release at least every couple of weeks to let the community know where we stand.
I've got
Like
a
Mr. Dalton spoke earlier, when the General Assembly comes back in for their special session, we don't know what they're going to do to our budget numbers at that point, but I know that we are putting a tremendous amount of money out up front prior to even getting the kids in the building. So if anything that you all could do would be extremely helpful.
And I don't know if you've paid attention to some of the federal stuff that's going on right now, how they're wanting to give a lot more money to the private schools and hold them to a different standard, how they're trying to, the COVID money's coming out based upon your Title I enrollment, but at a private school, it's based upon 100% of your enrollment. So, that's a little different, two separate standards. So,
just in latex gloves, the prices doubled at Harbor Freight. I was at one of them over the weekend. Double what it was just several weeks ago.
there's a lot of
If you
gouging
could get
going
them.
on.
Yep. So I guess we will be presenting us with a
Well, I
request.
think the plan is have a discussion tonight, and then as a group, the board develop a plan of how to divide the money. Bottom line is that by December the 30th, all this money has to be spent. And board supervisors will have to prioritize the need. That's your job, is to go forward. But I think it's important for y'all to understand, a lot of other people are gonna be coming up here tonight, that some of these things are pretty dire need that we never planned for as we were budgeting. And we talked a little bit about it later on in the budget process, but surely we prioritize, we'll get it right this time.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman Ham could be next.
All right, Dale.
As they come up to the podium, part of the award of the COVID-19 monies is the county's supposed to ensure that an equitable share of the CRF funds that are received or shared with the grant of each town within its jurisdiction. Just as with the funds retained in the county funds, granted towns must be spent in accordance with the same requirements, the same documentation as provided by the counties. On a prorated share, the town has a percentage of population of the county that has to be prorated out. Didn't mean to-
No, you're doing good. Keep on.
You're at the podium, it's now your turn.
Very good. I'm Ed Terry, Vice Mayor of Town Hillsville. This is our Mayor, Greg Crowder. This item is on your agenda, and I guess we're curious as to what's to be said. If it's okay with you, we would gladly ask you to table our time for our discussion, if any is needed, till after we hear what you have to say about how you're going to, I guess when we saw that on the agenda, our assumption is that you were going to be discussing your intentions on how to get on with the pass-through part of the program.
I think we want to understand what y'all requested, and Greta was good enough to send us over a list of things. So if y'all could just share the need for all those up front, that may help
But
us
the-
as we go through our evaluation.
Right, and do keep in mind, we feel for the school system as well, but like the school system, we've incurred quite a bit of expense already with, especially with personnel issues with, what is the term, where they're in hazardous conditions. We've had to rearrange different aspects of our office setting, and I guess the bottom line on the spreadsheet that was presented is that we went over with our accounting firm, which you share, same accounting firm, as to whether all these expenses fit the guidelines as seen and presented under the of the Coronavirus Relief Fund Act. And it did. And we also found on your website, which is one reason we kind of want to sit back and see what the indication was. We found a copy of a certification for receipt of coronavirus funds payments by the town of Hillsville, Virginia, which is basically our presentation to you of how we would agree to receive the funds. We didn't create this document. We have very little disagreement with the document, but there are a few places that we have questions, and since it would be a contractually binding document, a couple of addendums that we would suggest. But Swell, how did you create this, or did your attorney, or how?
Actually, the Local Government Attorneys Association presented that to all the counties.
Okay.
And
The
Loudoun County, Fairfax County, that's the document that they've been using. So
Okay, our question involves only Section 3. All the other sections are acceptable with our treasurer as well. She's been our go-to person on digging into the nitty-gritty of what that CARES Act says. But subsection A under Section 3, it says, are prorated per capita to the CCEMS, and we've made the assumption so far that's Carroll County Emergency Medical Services, or what is CCEMS? Okay. Well, our question is, what does that mean?
I'll give my version of it. County attorney may say I'm wrong because he's reviewing it also. He hasn't given us his final blessing, I don't believe. No. Okay. My version of, after reading the CARES Act and also talking to some of the people that developed this agreement, that items that we both benefit from, such as schools, Carroll County EMS, could be the fire department, are jointly benefiting the county and the town together. And those items should be taken off the top prior to the disbursement of the funds. And my county attorney's never told me if I'm right or wrong, but that's how I would do it. And that's the reference there.
Okay, let me repeat back how I would like to have heard that, okay? Let me make sure, because that's the only way that we can do things. So that would indicate to me that if that was to be done equitably, that you would take the per capita emergency services portion from the 2.5 million first. So, and based on per capita county, including the town population. Okay, well that's beginning to make sense. If that is done first, and then we come up with the per capita.
We want to, instead of writing a big long agreement that says that your portion of yours has to help.
Sure.
Because they're good town citizens, we take your population out. It just seemed fair to just take it off the top and then split it.
Right, and that is fair. What we were making sure was that the 2,900 or 2,653 town citizens weren't contributing twice to the effort.
No,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
That's the reason I was glad to see
Yeah.
Mr. Crew here. I think, hopefully, he would tell you that I have a reputation of trying to be fair with the town. In his
Okay.
past experience. He's representing the town, and I think we'll see.
Right.
But that's the intent.
Okay.
I actually ran into Mr. Cruz's colleague in court on the end of the day on Friday, and Paul mentioned the same issue, and we discussed that very briefly
Okay.
on Friday, and I said I'd look at it and confirm it with him. But that was our interpretation, is that the CCEMS has joined the shared benefit across all county citizens. So
Right.
that was the reason for that deduction.
Okay.
I think another problem, or I should say a concern we had, all the counties around us had received their money based on our population. And like, say, the town is 11.1% of the population of Carroll County. That comes to $87 a person in Carroll County with the money that y'all, the whole lump sum. And we were just wondering what we might get, just hoping it would be covered. And,
I think, how I've been, we haven't talked a lot about it, but my interpretation, I went and got the census data and prorated it out.
Right.
That's how it's.
2018 census, that's how we did it as well.
Yeah. I didn't see any other, I couldn't go around and count town residents.
Nor would we want you to.
So, and it references in the CARES document the census data year, which is pretty clear. So go get the Weldon Cooper, the same data.
Sure.
And
We're not as,
that's the prorated share.
sure.
Or,
And of course, it's our understanding, correct me if you're wrong, that the county received those monies first part of June. Is that
sometime in
correct?
June.
Okay. Well, we haven't received any of ours yet. So that's what we're about. We promise within the guidelines, we understand you have administrative authority, and that you'll need us to provide clear documentation as to what we spend it on, and that it was right and proper, and we intend to do that. But like I said up front, we've already incurred considerable expenses, and we've provided what we hope is adequate documentation as to the quality of qualifying for what we're wanting to do. And so we'd like to know the amount that you've formulated, and of course, if it's after, we're still a little curious on everybody, we're all in this together, as they say 10,000 times on the commercial. What amount of money are you, even if we do a prorated amount, there's some particular amount of money that has to come off the top for both parties, the county and the town, for the emergency services.
Right.
Have you come to that conclusion?
Yeah, my question would be, when you say we pay half, are you saying we're paying for our 11% of the population, or?
I don't think it said half.
No, he didn't
You
say
didn't?
half.
Okay, that's me, sorry about that.
I think I mentioned prorated
Yeah,
share.
you did.
But at the end of the day, and I don't know those numbers off the top of my head, I guess I go back to the computer and get them from the back. But I don't think they're very much debatable. They're real numbers.
Right.
And if Mr. Slaybach, I think that's him back there, him hiding in that mask. He's gonna tell you what EMS is looking at here in a few minutes. So maybe it's clear. Whether it's 220,000 or 260, I think those numbers are a mathematical thing that we can share when we provide.
Right.
I will say that the board only adopted a fiscal budget on June the 29th. So,
Right.
and the 2.5 million or whatever it is in the budget without any allocations to anybody. Just, that's part of the reason everybody came tonight so we could.
But,
hear
yeah, by all
exactly.
means, sure. And we understand that, and we understand the pressure that you gentlemen are all feeling at this time because we got this COVID money in hand and everybody's wanting their share. And so you've shed light on what that section means. And I don't know that we have grand issues with, we had questions rather than issues. So I think that's the main place we had questions.
We just want to understand what the needs are. So
Right.
the Board of Supervisors can give the direction to staff, break it up in whatever manner they tell us. And then the letters will go out. Then if we got a discussion, we'll have a discussion.
Okay.
But the bottom line is December 30th, you got to have the money spent.
Well, that's right. And those budget items that, you know, your crew's already spent a bunch of it. We spent a bunch of it. The school system spent a bunch of it. And EMS is going to report on how they've already encumbered or spent it. And so we understand. But we do, the things we want to know is when. And I don't think that's an unfair request as to when we can expect.
I don't think it's unfair.
Yeah, I mean,
I have one question also. What is that number that y'all are requesting?
well,
Is it something you could share with?
It's in this bag.
'Cause, well, I've got two different, no.
Oh,
If you go by the population, and
there's two
it was
different
like 29,000.
That's just what I'm at.
600 and some changes right at 290.
yeah.
If it's $87 a person.
Two different, no, sir, that was on the percentage. If you go strictly per capita, if you take the amount that the county received, divided by the county's population, it comes out to $87.70 per person. And if you turn around and multiply that by the town's 2018 census population, that figure, before we get to the EMS enlightened situation that you explained to us, but that figure comes to $232,668.10.
Okay, that's fine. I just had a paper that had two different numbers on it.
What numbers does your paper have?
One has 232,270 and one's got 232,668.
Okay, yeah.
There was one in an email and then one in an actual spreadsheet. And the
Right.
numbers were
Okay.
different.
And
I just want to know sort of.
And our office has conferred with surrounding municipalities and county offices to see how they've done it, and it's, apparently this document has trickled down to where per capita is the way that it's being done, so. We'd be glad to do it on percentage, but, because that's a bigger number, but that's okay. Any other questions of Town of Hillsville?
I don't think so.
Thank you.
Unless you guys, I talked to Retta today, and I will say this from the board, that we want to have a stronger relationship with the town, especially on the attraction of business and industry and some other projects out there. And Retta and I set an appointment to start that discussion. And I think that, I used to say in Whitwell, it get me in trouble, that what's good for the town's good for the county. And that has to happen. We've got to move forward with that and make everybody successful and grow. That's the only way that we can survive. We can't survive the status quo.
We agree wholeheartedly and have been working diligently for years and years to try to help that happen. So we're glad to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I got a question. Would it be appropriate to release a portion of those funds in the interim, less than half or something? I'm just throwing this out as a discussion thing. I don't know until we get the exact number that we need to do. I'm just brainstorming here.
I think at the end, and that's fine with me, but at the end, we just need to understand what the EMS number is.
And hopefully we'll hear that.
We just need to understand those numbers, and then we can start talking about the release of funds or however the board deems necessary if they want to do it. I would just hope that we'd have an agreement in place before we
Yeah, signed agreement. It's always helpful. Those things are, anyway. I guess the next person would be Laura Beth Burnell.
Thank you. I'll be really quick. Just have two questions. I'm here tonight representing the Friends of Hillsville. I think you all are familiar with what we do. We help put on different events in the town of Hillsville that benefit both town and county residents and far beyond. But today specifically, I want to ask about our combined event that we've done together for the past 2 years, which is Carroll County does the Pumpkin Festival and the Friends of Hillsville do the Chili Shootout. And last year we worked with Ken, who I understand is no longer with the county, and the year prior to that we worked with Amanda, and had 2 very successful events. They were enormously well attended, and we'd like to continue to do that, but we don't know who to talk to since there's not a tourism manager anymore for the county. So we would like to know if the county would like to join us in the Pumpkin Festival. We've planned it for October 17th for the Chili Shootout. We usually choose our day based on the Virginia Tech schedule. That seems to be most successful for us. So we chose October 17th, and we'd love to have the county work with us with the Pumpkin Festival. And if that is something that you all are interested in, we just would like to know who we can talk to see how we can be helpful and how we can work together and make it a successful event. And that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you.
Brenda, maybe that could be a subject to talk about. That's okay.
Any other citizens?
Are we gonna go through this COVID list and lay out all these people, Sheriff's Department and EMS?
All right, that works.
Get too far out of kilter.
Yep, works for me.
Has your mic got a button?
It does.
I'm getting blowed up with Texas, that people can't hear you.
All right, who we gonna hear from first?
Whoever can run up here first. Mr. Slayback said, Mr. Bird and John are saying them, they're talking themselves, they must want to go home.
Sure. Yeah. Well, a couple things that we're asking for. Number one, looking to remount an ambulance. That's at a cost of approximately $173,053. When we run a COVID patient, which we run multiple, it takes, I would say, a minimum of an hour to decon an ambulance. So therefore, that truck becomes out of service for a minimum hour length of time. We do have an aging fleet. We do not always have another truck to go to if more calls come in because of some that are out of service due to engine problems and so forth. So we are requesting a remount, and that's at the cost of, like I said, $173,000. Several other requests here, and these requests cover the county EMS system as a whole. So if you see number one for 11 Lucas devices, which is a chest compression system, that's a total cost of $211,434. A couple just quick things here. That is considered a high-risk procedure when we provide a CPR on someone who has a respiratory illness such as COVID. The American Heart Association, along with multiple other organizations, have come out with a recommendation to maintain as much distancing as we can when we're providing CPR or high-risk procedures on someone. They have come out and said that things such as manual CPR is a possible transmission route. During CPR, the operator performing his aerobic activity increases, therefore putting them at greater risk. Ventilating a patient during CPR is obviously a increased risk as well. And during CPR, we rotate providers every 2 minutes. And so that's a a lot of people that can become exposed during one single call. This would help to mitigate that. Like I said, this is for countywide, not just for Carroll Fire Rescue. Number 2 on the list is the McGrath video laryngoscopes. Once again, another high-risk procedure that we perform for somebody that has respiratory illness. Carroll Fire Rescue currently has 4 of the McGrath devices. We would like to put them on the rest of the trucks in Carroll County. That way, we can help reduce the risk to providers when they're intubating someone with a respiratory illness. Also, with these 2 things, we've been working on trying to come up with a county-wide standard. So if I get on a Piper's Gap truck, or if I get on a Laurel truck, or if I get on my truck, we know what equipment's going to be there. I don't have to quick relearn what I'm using during that time. So this would go a long way towards both reducing the risk to the providers and being able to jump on whatever truck in the county and have the same equipment. Number 3 on the list, if you have that in front of you, just some other items such as blood pressure cuffs. These are something that's relatively expensive and something that we like to dispose of if we have a possible COVID patient. Things that we use routinely on COVID patients and other respiratory patients, things such as capnography, entitled capnography. We use SpO2 sensors. That's something that's usually reusable, but we would like to be able to dispose of them if we have a possible COVID patient, so thus buying disposable ones. Also, just things that we're already buying and going through large amounts of, such as gloves, gowns, N95s, things like that. That's a larger cost to the county as a whole than what we've been having in the past. And also just other COVID-related expenses, such things as disposable CPAP, bag valve mask, vent tubing, all things that we're using during COVID. Once again, kind of an increased cost. Some of these things are reusable in the past, and right now the best practice is not to reuse them because it's not as easy to sanitize them afterward. So that's our request. If you have anything else, or if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, for Gary gets to the podium, that we need to be very careful of the portion of their requests that is for county residents that Carroll Fire and Rescue does can be a prorated share. The rest, anything that's outfitted out in the county, then would be directly from the county funds. So we'll need a breakdown of how that is prorated where, so that as we go through this, that we can defend what we're doing with the splitting of those funds, okay?
Sure.
The only thing I was going to add to what Keith going over the itemized request list with that, and much like what the school system is facing, is it's kind of uncharted territory. And when you're discussing the allocation of these funds, if anything, you keep your attention to the items that would further protect our providers during those high-risk procedures. Unfortunately, we are dealing with, potential exposures, and there's a quarantine time, and fortunately, these tests have all come back negative, but when we have providers out during a quarantine period, that short staffs the station. And so like I said, these items that would just further protect our providers during the high-risk procedures really are the things that, and it's not just, like he said, Carroll Fire and Rescue personnel, but our county-wide volunteers who are, the key word there is a volunteer, and your heart has to go out to them because they're making the choice to step through the door for no other reason than to help their neighbor at that point. So I just ask you keep that in mind during that allocation debate. So, thank you.
Would it be possible that in one of the maybe next board meetings that we have to to have someone from EMS dressed as how they do when they go to a response? You know, I don't, you know, when the public sees somebody coming, they don't know what's going on, maybe, you know, that what you expect to find, you have to be careful no matter what. But if you just at least show us, and the county folks would know, then if somebody shows up dressed to the hilt, you know, they understand why.
Yeah, yes,
Yep.
we'll do it.
All right, thank you.
I have a question I'd like to ask. It's not doing with the COVID money or anything, but back in January of this year, I brought toward Mr. Keith, he was the director, and Mr. Dalton, trying to get an improvement plan for Law Fork. Has anything been done with that?
So we have talked with Stephen, who's, you know, the captain of Law Fork, and
Right.
and his request was to let them have a meeting and discuss, you know, going to a first response agency. Now, at that point, it would be the discussion with the board on you know, what they want to do moving forward, and you know what we can support. You know, going forward, as far as providing coverage to them.
So they don't have any better coverage than they did have?
It currently is still the same as it was then, yes, sir.
Okay. I'm getting a lot of call. The reason I ask, I'm getting a lot of call, we raised their taxes. And they expect something for their taxes, and they're asking me, when are we going to get better coverage out here? So that's the reason I ask.
All right. We'll move back up to payment of invoices. Do I need to go
We still have
somewhere?
the sheriff,
Oh, that's all right. Sorry. Thank you for keeping me on track.
I don't see the sheriff here, but
Who else is here?
if you want, if you'd like, I'll go ahead and speak.
All right, that'll
The
work.
sheriff's, he made a specific request back in May the 29th, requesting hazardous duty pay for his deputies and his staff. That request in total turned out $1,000 per month hazard duty pay for 4 months for 53 staff members, which is $212,000. And that is his request.
That was 1,000 per person?
Yes, last paragraph of his request.
That's for the last 4 months.
Yes, for a 4-month period, yes.
That doesn't include anything going forward.
Not making little of the sheriff's request, but we also, in your packets, there's a little breakdown of hazardous duty pay for all the departments in the county, which total $47,800 per month. That would be $100 extra for all those employees that came to work every day, from social services to constitutional officers, et cetera. That's $47,800 per 100 if during your consideration of that hazardous duty pay.
Is the town, Greg, is the town doing hazardous duty pay, or plan on doing hazardous duty pay?
Yes.
Do you have an amount that y'all discussed?
$50,000.
$1,000 also?
50.
What?
50,000 total.
And the last item you have in there is actual supplies that we bought to put barriers, sneeze guard, cleaning, et cetera, that wasn't in the budget. And that we've spent out to date, over $25,248. And there's one additional item. No one's made a request, but I think it's worthy of the board's consideration that you set aside a portion of these funds for Carroll County business grants for small businesses, of some amount that you set aside that they can actually come in and make an application, and the board award those grants to people that's had a small business that had to shut down or needed additional supplies. And the number I'd written down for the whole county, because there's a lot out there, is somewhere around $200,000 to set aside for those grants.
Now, counting all those expenditures, does that cover the total amount?
Actually, that puts you about 2.9 million, so you're gonna have to allocate some type of plan in place. If the board wants the staff to make the recommendations, we'll be more than happy to bring it back and provide a spreadsheet of how and what at the next meeting so that we can proceed. And if you want a portion of these funds allocated prior to that of half of what we release, we can do that also.
This includes what the school board has brought as well, okay. I would like to get with the town and see that we pay the same amount regardless. I think all employees who worked during this thing, you know, everybody's that could be exposed where you're in the town office or where you're in a patrol car or where you're a maintenance person cleaning up after this. I think everybody that worked.
I do believe that part of the school allocation that went directly to school, that they paid some hazardous duty pay to the people that delivered lunches and staff members.
So if we could work up something like that that's fair amongst everybody would be my preference. Do y'all have any suggestions?
I think we should be a good neighbor. I mean, a lot of the stuff we can pay in-house and stuff and work with something with the town so they can be moving forward. I'd like to see.
We can get a plan together. I don't have maybe had a discussion with some folks that if we got together, we should be getting together at least 2 board members with their 2 board members periodically, just to discuss mutual stuff going forward. You know, we've had ad hoc stuff in the past, but there's some serious stuff that we need to discuss other than the coronavirus with the town of Hillsville.
Mr. Chairman, I know I'm gonna call him Mayor Trenton Crew back there. That's how I called him for years. I think it's important that you have a town-county committee with at least 2 board members, and 2 of theirs, and administrative people, and meet on a regular basis so that you can deal with issues between the town and work towards progress.
I think that's a good idea. I'll leave that up to Dr. Littrell to make those appointments. Did you hear that, Dr. Littrell? Maybe not. We'll get the word to him. If anybody is interested, just shoot.
Yes, I can.
Okay. That works.
Do you want it tonight, or do you want it next time?
No, next time will be fine. If somebody wants to volunteer, they can call you or email you, whatever. Got a lot of reverb.
He's listening to it.
Tim?
Yep.
Tim?
All right, well,
Okay.
but I think we do need the county to give us some guidelines or proposal what we should put all these things together.
We will email that out to the board y'all can look at it, mark it up, and then we'll have from those comments at the next board meeting that you have, we'll have something that y'all can pass and move forward with.
Are y'all on a money crunch?
We weren't, but we are now.
Well, how quickly do you need something? That's what I need to.
30 days ago.
I'm sure, then we can always go back.
She said a couple of weeks would be nice.
We don't have a board meeting.
No,
rest of this month.
that's why I was asked,
Yeah.
do you want to do it partial? Just
Let's do
just bring
50% of what they asked for.
All right,
tonight.
is that a motion?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion.
Hang
Do
on.
I have,
Hang on.
give me a number, yeah.
I'll give it.
In the interim, before we start, just a suggestion, before we start making payments on hazardous duty, let's get together and do one, let's all decide what that might be, so it's not different for you or your people or our people, if that works for you.
All right, I'll make a motion that we'll give the town $116,334 today.
All right, I have a motion. Do I
I'll
have
second that motion.
motion and a second? Any discussion?
$116,334.
Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. Start with you, Philip.
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Now, where else do we got to go to now? Yep. All right, we need to go back to the payment of invoices. Do I have a motion to approve the payment of the invoices?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Tracy.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meetings?
I'll make that motion. We approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Is that all three sets?
Yes.
June 22nd, 23rd, and 29th.
All right, hearing no discussion, I'll start with Philip.
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. That brings us down to the Comcast agreement.
We have a draft that was sent to the county. I would refer to the county attorney to address the franchise agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Dalton. Gentlemen, we've received a franchise request from Comcast to renew their cable TV franchise agreement. I believe from their correspondence, their franchise had expired last September and had just not been renewed. I have reviewed the document, and I didn't have a lot of proposed suggested changes, but there are a few things here or there that I would recommend that we go back to legal counsel for Comcast to discuss. The chief thing I think to bring to your attention is that I do not see in this franchise agreement a comparable provision like exists in the charter agreement. I think you'll remember probably September of last year, Charter actually renewed its franchise agreement, and it did contain a provision in there to provide no-cost service to certain basic services
basic cable, basically, to certain public facilities within the county. There is no real comparable provision in the Comcast agreement for that. And under the terms of the charter agreement, if Comcast is given this sort of preferential provision, then charter would have the right to request the same and be given those same terms. So I think that's something we want to get on the same page with Comcast on, but there aren't really significant suggested revisions that I would have, and if the board's so inclined, I would recommend we set a public hearing for sometime in the near future to receive comment, and then you can approve a finalized version of this agreement. I'd expect maybe the first meeting in September would be a reasonable timeline, just to, if there are any sort of concerns that Comcast Council wants to raise in the interim, that would give us enough time to advertise, work out those deals, and have a final agreement prior to any public hearing. So if you're inclined to schedule a public hearing now, that would be my suggested date. There's no rush on that, but it's, I think the September timeline is a reasonable timeline. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Any motion for public hearing?
I make the motion, we have a public hearing, Comcast franchise agreement, be advertised.
What's the date that we're going to be?
On
September?
September the 14th, September 14th.
September 14th. I have a motion to have a public hearing.
Correct.
Is there anything in the franchise agreement that encourages Comcast to expand their services into places that are not served at the present time?
I'll let Mr. Durbin speak to that.
That is one of the provisions that I would discuss with Comcast Council. I'd want it to at least be harmonized with what we negotiated with Charter.
All right. Go back to the motion for public hearing on September the 4th, 14th, September 14th. Do I have a second?
I second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, start with you, Tracy.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. All right, that brings us down to the Piper's Gap Rescue. It's where they're going to refurbish, especially we're approving the permission to sell their truck and permission to, well, let's stick with that one. Motion to allow the Piper's Gap Rescue to sell their, is it to buy a truck or to sell a truck? We give them
At the last meeting, you approved that they sell their truck to Galax. This meeting is to allow them to take that money and purchase the truck. When it's purchased, they're going to pay 100% of the monies to buy the truck. It'll be titled in the Carroll County Board of Supervisors' name.
All right, do I have a motion to approve that?
I'll make a motion that we approve that.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Tracy.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. All right, the next one is Carroll County Fire and Rescue. It's approve a grant to refurbish an ambulance. That would save us $150,000, is that correct?
There's two portions of that, Mr. Chairman. One is to refurbish it, which we've got an 80-20 grant. The second part is to approve going ahead so that the money could be spent December 30th, approve Carroll EMS to issue a purchase order for the refurbish of the second unit for COVID, out of that COVID money.
All right, do I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion that we approve this as presented.
I have a motion to approve. That includes the grant in the other part, correct? Yep. Do I have a second?
I second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll start with you, Philip.
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Brings us down to the DHCD virtual training. And this is a grant that Tim Carpenter obtained. It's a $2,000 grant from the Department of Housing and Community Development. It's for, what is it? Virtual training support grant. So that's a saving. I'm glad some of our employees are getting grants. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Philip.
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
And I say yes. That brings us down to the sewer service agreement and debt service. This is something for the board to review, and
Mr. Chairman, this agreement that you have before you was one that was signed several years ago. I have passed it along to Carroll County Public Service Authority. There's two components that I felt everybody needs to be aware of. There's 2 additional annual payments that the Carroll County PSA needs to incorporate somehow into their wastewater rates, $44,922 annually and $70,466 annually, for about $115,000 plus or minus dollars that the PSA needs to incorporate into the future, into the rate structure to be able to pay this.
so that's $100,000 extra a year. Did I get the numbers right?
Yep. Which is 44,000.
But there's nothing for the board to do about it. We passed this along to the PSA.
All right.
You have a copy of the agreements that were signed.
And these were signed back in
2015.
2015.
The initial agreement was in 2007.
And this is not in their present budget, correct?
Correct.
All right. Mount Rogers PDC Smart Scale. This is information on the projects going forth. And I don't think we need to point out a lot of it other than I can find ours.
These are the projects that have been funded in the past and also the upcoming projects that Mount Rogers has recommended to be funded through VDOT. Last page of that is the resolution from Mount Rogers Executive Committee.
And do we know, is that guaranteed funded, or that has to be sent forward to Smart Scale?
Those are applications in the Smart Scale. They'll be graded, and you'll learn in the first part of next year whether they're funded or not.
And one with Carroll County, it's the Carroll County High School sidewalk project that involves continuing the pedestrian corridor from the high school to the town of Hillsville by providing a raised pedestrian island for the crossing on Route 58 from high school to athletic training field, and a hard surface pedestrian accommodation along Highway 58. So if the state approves that, that's what it would be for us. All right, July 27th meeting. Got a request, Mr. Dalton, that the Board of Supervisors eliminate the meeting on July 27th, 2020, and authorize utility payments and any other bills that would incur late charges or interest to be processed and ratified at the August 10th meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Tracy.
Yes.
Dr. Lettrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. That brings us down to the school resource officer grant.
Mr. Chairman, I'd request the board accept this grant.
All right. That's a $35,000 grant. If I'm looking at the right one. Yep. From Criminal Justice Services. The School Resource Officer, School Security Officer Grant Program. Do I have a motion to approve or accept that grant?
I make a motion to accept the grant.
I have a motion to accept the grant. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll start with you, Philip.
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Dr. Lettrell?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Brings us down to the consent agenda, consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I make a motion, we accept the consent calendar as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Tracy.
Yes.
Dr. Lettrell?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. All right, the next one is a VATI application notice. We have, what we need to do is approve any grant as a result of this. Essentially what it is going to be increasing our telecommunications initiative. And I know that there's a Comcast contacted me with reference to a section in my district that they would be applying for grants. So this would allow any other or any entity to apply for grants. Is that correct, Mr. Dalton?
The county would be the lead applicant, but my understanding, we've had several other telephone companies and cable companies talk to us about applying to extend their service under this application. The original letter that Comcast sent in gave us Honeycutt Dam Road and another location. We submitted our revised to Dr. Holmes. They said we would be applying in various locations throughout the county, so we're going to solicit other providers to help cover this shortage out there in different parts of the county. So that's our request, that the board approve that we make these applications, and we'll bring them back to you. The applications will be due on the August the 17th, so the first meeting in August, y'all will see what we're submitting for approval.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Start with you, Philip.
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Dr. Lettrow?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
All right. Old business, was there anything on old business other than delaying the planning commission meeting, joint meeting with the board of supervisors because of the coronavirus still? I don't guess that takes a vote, does it? Anything else? Did I miss something?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
The board appears to set a date for the joint, public hearing with the planning commission.
My understanding, because we don't know, we have, I guess we can come back and set it at a date once we know. I think we have someone that's not available to
Our
attend.
discussion for the 27th was to talk about the comp plan with the social distancing and everything. What we're asking to do is just delay that till some of these restrictions apply and we can all get together safely in one room.
Yeah, that was it.
Fair enough, I just want to make sure we weren't missing something.
Yep. All right, I had a motion for adjournment. Do I have a second? Nobody wants to go home?
I'll second it.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, thank you.
See you, Dr.
Dr.
Litchell.
Letcher, stay safe.